Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Coach and Benway podcast. I'm Coach Redpill, joined as always by my co-host, Dr. Benway. And the esteemed doctor wants you to have sex with a robot. So, can you please explain this, dear doctor? Because I thought that having sex with just regular women was enough, but no, it has to be with machines now.
I didn't necessarily prescribe sex with a robot, except to incels. I think they need it. But besides that, no. So where is this coming from? I wouldn't be surprised if people in our audience who are probably reading and responding to the like-minded news articles like I am, or social media shares like I am, you've probably noticed in about the last, I'd say 2 or 3 years, all sorts of articles pertaining to, oh, they're putting an AI in a sex doll, or all of these. What does it mean when men fuck sex dolls or robots? Does that mean that this is an anti-feminist stance? And
does the robot have consent?
Does the robot have consent? Does it dream of electric sheep? Things like that. But here's what this is kind of hinting at. Why I think you get all these crazy responses. I think people recognize, implicitly or not, partly, yeah, it's a joke, it's funny, but I think they recognize that if this actually does become a big deal, it really potentially fundamentally shift the way that not just the genders respond to each other, but how society is potentially structured and organized as a result. Because in regard, you're introducing a whole new, it's not a person, but a certain identity or a certain item that responds to you into the social sphere, the social network, and it can't help but change as a result of that. I think if we do some thought experiments, I think you could see like where this path potentially goes down.
I how could I put this? On the one hand, I find it kind of laughable, the notion that an appliance, because that's what we're talking about, a robot, a sex doll, a robotic sex doll with some sort of AI, even if it were like a full-on AI, like in the movie Her. Even if it were like that level of consciousness, it's how could I put this? It's an appliance. So these notions that does the robot have consent or some shit like that? Can you sexually assault a sex doll? I mean, come on, it's just absurd. Okay.
Let's. You said a good thing though. Appliance. Like how could we give so much thought to an appliance? But remember, let's go through history here of how appliances fundamentally change us. I mean, think about the radio.
Yeah.
Think about the TV more than the radio.
Yeah.
Think about yourself.
No,
right?
I was getting into that. I was going to say that.
Oh, sorry. I took your thunder and I put it in my pants, and it's mine now.
Yeah, it sounds. Oh God, I'm not going to say how that sounds. But anyway, look.
I know.
I mean, like seriously, look, it has the potential, just like other appliances, like the microwave and the TV, to really change the way we live. Okay. People forget, for instance, that the microwave oven, before the microwave oven, food preparation, it was a hassle. It was a time-consuming thing. You needed somebody to actually do it. You needed a cook, be it the wife or an actual maid who would cook or whatever. Okay, the microwave changed things. Television changed things. The radio changed things. So, or smartphones. Smartphones are an appliance, and they have radically changed the way that we interact today, and the way that we live today. So, I'm not saying that this appliance, a AI sex doll that is widely available, will not change things. Not at all. I think that it could potentially have enormous effects, but I don't think that they're going to be particularly good effects. And I'll explain why. See, if you have a sex doll that you just buy the sex doll, or perhaps rent it. And by the way, I'd find it rather disgusting to be fucking some sex doll that somebody else used before me. I'd just be creeped out. But okay, I'd be creeped out by the whole thing. So I'm not going to be going there to the Acme Sex Dolls Inc. company to buy one when they start rolling off the factory assembly line. But anyway, the point is, see, if you're using a sex doll, right, what incentive do you then have to form any kind of a relationship with a real woman? And so what's going to start happening is that men in particular are going to, especially low status men or men who are not sexually successful, are going to start flocking towards these dolls. And that will mean that a lot of women will be sexually unfulfilled. Now, it seems quite obvious for the obvious mechanics of sex, of male-female sex, cis-heteronormative sex, if you want to call it in that incredibly pompous term of the lefties, right? That the possibility of male sex dolls is far less likely. I would think that most
They do exist, though.
yeah, I'm sure they exist, but I think that women would be very scared of them because there's a whole psychological thing going on between men and women in that regard. Whereas a man would feel like, oh, you just roll over the doll and fuck the doll and that's it, And so women would be sexually unfulfilled. And they would therefore, and also a lot of men would be taken off the sexual marketplace. And so women would be forced to be competing for fewer men. And that will cause an enormous strain on them, on the sex, on the female sex, where they're going to have more and more competition for fewer and fewer men because so many men are going to be being taken out of the sexual marketplace because of these dolls. Does this make any sense?
It does. That's certainly one aspect of it that could certainly happen. I think you're already kind of, in preparation for this episode, I'll look around to see what men who use sex dolls talk about, and what you get a sense of is that they reach a point where you might think going into this, and this is just sex dolls without AI. I mean, throw in AI, this gets even more extreme, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Without the AI, the initial attitude you might have is, oh, they can't get women or they have problems with a relationship. This is a replacement. It may start out that way, but what you come to a realization very soon is that they appreciate it because it is not a real woman. Think about that, how that could play out, especially when AI gets involved. It's like, well, I am precisely going into this. I'd hate to call it a relationship, but if they think that is what it is, then who am I to say that's not? Relationship. I have a relationship with my toaster. It makes toast very well. This idea that, it's not, I don't have to put up with her bullshit. I don't have to put up with her bitching. I don't have to worry about if she's going to sue me and all of these things. You appreciate it for that thing in and of its own sake. And what may happen sexually is that you're probably going to lose your physical attraction to an actual, flesh and blood woman.
Yeah.
It just it's the very nature of what it is. The other option I was thinking is, would you, in some sense, especially think about if these robots get to the point where they're almost indistinguishable from humans, or even if they are distinguishable, they become mainstream. It's like where even couples are like happy to have one. Think about what could conceivably happen. It's like, remember the old aristocratic notion of marriage and relationships,
right? Yeah,
marriage was an
institution.
Yeah. You would have your wife who would produce your official offspring who would succeed you in your position in society. But your mistress was a real person. It was a real relationship. Could you conceivably have children with them?
Yeah.
You went to love with your mistress, and you went to the future of your society with your wife. I can see this happening again.
Yes.
You reproduce it because you can have your perfect relationship with the perfectly designed woman who looks exactly the way you want, says what you want, all of these other wonderful fantasies. But in order to procreate, right, you have your physical, human woman or human male. If you decide there will be a male sex robot, which I believe will happen, then what it's almost as if, imagine this playing out. It's like, people spend most of their times with their artificial companion, and they realize, we have to reproduce the species. So I don't know, once every few years, you go out, you meet an actual woman, you have congress of sex, and then you go back, and then the society is recreated. Now, if that happened, it would fundamentally destroy the family as we know it.
No, I disagree, actually. And I'll explain why. Because there's no incentive, social incentive nowadays to have children. Especially for women. Women are like, why have kids? It'll interfere with your career, blah, blah. See, because you're thinking of a previous notion whereby people reflexively knew that they had to have children in order to continue the society. But in our liberal democratic society of today, this an extremist, if you will, there is no incentive to have children. Quite the contrary. There are so many factors, so many things that are motivating people to not have children, to live for themselves and to live a solipsistic and hedonistic life that without children, that I don't see why men would be like married to a woman or have a relationship with a woman in order to have children, and and have the robot mistress. They just have the robot mistress. Why bother with the real woman? Especially as most men would just find it easier than to have a relationship with a real woman. You just go and buy the appliance, and presto, you can have sex whenever you want, and the AI is programmed to appeal to your personality, talk to you about the things that you like to talk about, or shut up when you want it to shut up. It's no negotiation with a robot, because human interaction is just a series of negotiations. With a robot, it's just demands. I do not see why a man would want to go back. I mean, if he gets used to the physical aspect of it, because I would find it disgusting to have any kind of physical interaction with a robot. No matter how quote unquote lifelike, I just find that creepy. But if you can get over that particular hump, forgive the pun, yeah, there would be no need. I understand what you're saying. I just think that there would be no need, and that it wouldn't happen because there is no need.
Well, it's interesting here as well, because I think liberal democracy it's almost like a bifurcated attitude on this. I think when you're if you're from a wealthier country, you're in the middle class, upper middle class or above. Yeah, you and of yourself, it's fulfilling your pleasure principle.
Yeah.
The notion of a long-term societal goal is kind of indifferent to you. Nevertheless, the engine of economic growth demands more bodies to buy.
But we have migration.
Yeah, well, no, but that's the thing. What because this kind of why I like this use case is that it extenuates and makes clear the problems we're facing in society now. I think what would happen is you would be forced to have a bifurcated society again, like you said, migration, or that there will be the lowly dregs of society who have to make just enough money to keep producing, to keep making money, to keep buying shit, to make the engine of growth happen. But the leadership or what have you can fulfill their pleasure principles as they need, and will kind of in some sense dissipate. Now, what may happen, like I said, if you're operating on pure pleasure principle and an artificial companion will fulfill that, will society realize, look, yes, we haven't thought about like long-term family growth, but hey, we need the bodies and we need intelligent bodies. Would they then find themselves going into the basically the Brave New World situation? Remember how Aldous Huxley dealt with it, because he also had the notion that families aren't really going to be produced as a result of this, but we engineer people. They are incubated, they grow, they become alpha, betas, gammas, deltas. Yeah. And we, and they go around fucking around and having a good time. And I mean, it's funny, like if you take this robot to its conclusions, you could see a story where you get there.
Well, you want me to freak you out a little bit more?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. Do it. I'm ready.
You're
Saturday
ready?
morning, I'm ready.
Okay. Let me pitch you this. This is true, by the way. They have developed an artificial uterus, and just like with Dolly, the cloned sheep, they are using lambs to gestate in these artificial uteri, and they're getting to be good at it. They're getting good at it, and so it's just going to be a few steps here and there in order to make it with a human child. So we can come to the position, and hear me out here, where you have a sex doll, a sex robot, right, with AI, and they have,
artificial uterus, and you artificially inseminate it. Yeah.
Well, no, not artificially. You just, fuck it the normal way.
Yeah, but you need female. You need the female egg.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay, who knows? But you see my point.
No, you didn't freak me out because this exact notion was posited by me. I was going to be my next spot.
Oh,
it's like,
okay.
Yeah, you could make the robot do that. And if you did it that way, here's what's also interesting. What is the psychological makeup of that child? Yes, biologically that child is fully human, but its birthing matrix, to use the Superman term, is a robot. His father fucked a robot. He doesn't know his father, or vice versa.
However the case may be.
however the chips may fall,
Hmm.
however the sperm meets its egg. What does that then do to that? Because you would have a replica of the family, but it's a replica of the family. And that's a weird thing that I don't even know how to postulate. What would that kid think about his parents' eyes? Is it like a step parent that he'd think this sex doll is a real parent? Um, you know, if he, would it be like,
Well, no, I mean,
Data's your
for
dad?
instance, you have children who were born prematurely and they were in an incubator for a while. An incubator, in many ways, mimics the environment of a womb, but no child or grown man feels any affection whatsoever for the incubator that he happened to have been in because he was born premature. I would think the same thing would happen. That it would just be an appliance. It would just be discarded. You might have like nostalgic affection, the way that some people collect old computers or something like that, but not any kind of real emotional attachment to the thing. And here's more to the point. See, that child would be born without a mother. Any mother would be an artificial mother, like a stepmother, for instance, or something like that, or a caregiver that becomes very attached to the child, but not an actual mother. And so their emotional development would be detached. There would be less strong emotional. There would be less of a strong emotional bond, a more individualistic
Yeah.
person. Because I see it
And
with
I think
my own small children who are incredibly attached to their mother. I have a daughter and a son who's 5 and 3 respectively, and they are incredibly attached to their mother, as they should be. And their mother gives them, love. And scolds them once in a while and tells them to pick up their toys and the usual. But most of all, their mother gives them love, affection, attention, care, because they are her children. Okay, this isn't something that has to be forced out of her. But a child incubated like that is not going to have that relationship. And without that kind of relationship, I think that child will grow up lacking in affectivity. And I think that it will be a disaster for that child. That's my thinking.
it would be a disaster for society if it was on the large scale, but I also think it would also go to your, like I said, the Huxley notion of the world.
Yeah.
Here's another scenario that I had thought through, because you and I both like stories, and I think about them this way. Imagine I'm sure we're all aware of that story of a kid who's adopted, grows up, parent, mother or father, whatever, thinking it's the real deal, and then all of a sudden there's the realization, oh, it's not, and then you have to go through a sort of identity crisis potentially.
The Pinocchio
Imagine it,
story.
but yeah, but now like take it in this context. Let's say you had a sex doll that was a birthing matrix. It doesn't even matter if they were born through the doll, but needless to say, the robot is acting as your mother. Maybe it's even programmed to act that way. She has all the affection that a mother has, but then you get to that point, whether by the parents telling them or the kid accidentally finding the receipt for his mother. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Where he comes to this realization, and it's not even just, oh, this other human, isn't really your mother. It's, oh, this mother that you think, oh yeah, it's like it's a smoke and mirrors kind of thing. It's not even a human being, arguably. What kind of existential crisis do you go through then?
I don't know. I mean, that would be weird as hell. Because also, see, indisputably, a mother's affection for her child or a father's affection for his child is sort of like, built in by, you want to say creationism by God, or you want to say natural selection by just evolution, whichever, it doesn't matter. The end result is the same. Uh, Mothers and fathers feel affection for their child, many times instinctively and therefore without any kind of free will. They feel it. They're quote unquote programmed to feel it, right? Similarly to a robot that has been programmed to feel affection and for the child and take care of the child. But there is ultimately an element of free will, because every parent, human parent, can walk away from a child and can just abandon the child, abandon him to whatever fate the child has, leave him at the steps of a church or put him up for adoption or whatever, or allow somebody else to step into the role of being a parent, right? But we, on a daily basis, choose to be the parent to our child and choose to inculcate certain, you know, certain ideas, certain habits, teach the child, and we choose that every day. We have that choice, but a robot doesn't. It's just programmed, like in a good appliance. And I think that that's the issue. I don't know. It's.
Well, it's interesting. What you described was sort of like there's a moment in the sequel to Blade Runner 2049.
I didn't see it yet. Yeah.
There's a moment where because there's a holographic woman who's it's funny. You have the replicant who is an artificial human has a holographic companion who is artificial relative to even him. You know what I mean? It's like multi layers of that. And there's a moment in the story where she's very affectionate towards him. Gives him a name where none others give him and call him Joe. And it's very believable affection. And then for whatever reason, she's out of the picture, and he's walking down the, I guess, street, if you want to call it, and there's a holographic projection of this product being sold, not the one that he's aware of, but another one of her kind. And it's like an interactive ad, and she goes up to him. She's building size. She goes up to him and says, "Oh, you look like a real Joe." And what the interpretation you could conceivably have is all of that affection that she gave, was it based off of like an actual alive creature that had will that chose to do that, or was it just doing what it was absolutely programmed to do, and there is no personality in it? It was all just a smoke and mirrors con job. There's ways to interpret it one way or the other, but what you described is essentially that phenomenon, right? That the fundamental basis of the relationship has to be some sort of free will, or the idea that there's a chance that this thing could have rejected you, or could have resisted you, or could have said, fuck you. You had to earn something, right?
Right.
But here's the deal, though. I think, ironically enough, even though we talk about the individual choice and freedom and liberal democracy, we've kind of forced everything into just hedonism and acceptance of it to such a degree that the concerns about those things are already being undermined. I mean, think about it. It's like, all types of, sex work interaction is just entertaining and enjoyable. We just don't want exploitation. You know what? The family unit, it's an arbitrary construct anyway. You should be free to do what you want any old time. This, that, and go down the list. All of the old notions of like, well, part of society was you learning to control yourself and kind of work through it, and your freedom came from that, is replaced with, just fulfill your goddamn need. If that's the case, that worry about is this like a real person and I'm not, I wonder if we just will reject that concern outright. Are we already kind of rejecting it? In some sense, you get some people who already think of themselves as either transhuman or post-human or what have you.
What you're basically saying is that we just be okay with being solipsistic, just being just navel gazers. And
the question is,
the effects of other people around us is just how they make us feel. So it doesn't really matter if it's a person or an appliance. Is that what you're saying? That we're basically a nation, we're becoming a society of sociopaths?
Yes, essentially I think we do. And all you have to do is just look at
that's
how we
deeply disturbing. I mean, you
about,
realize how deeply disturbing that is. Yeah.
But I think it's true. I think we've been trained to be solipsistic, really. I mean, even think about, even though people are going to freak out when I say this, but if they're watching this podcast, they would have freaked out by many things by now.
Yeah.
Think about the very notion of transgenderism.
Right.
It's absolutely solipsistic.
Oh,
I mean, you are unbound. You are unbounding yourself from all notions of physical reality.
Yeah.
And saying like any kind of thing I want to be is just a construct that I can get to. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And you build it that way. It's like you're so solipsistic that even you're disassociated from your own body and it just becomes something productizable. Yeah. Right. And even like our favorite friend, Zoe Quinn, who many of us know from wonderful Gamergate world. One of her big things is she wants to be a transhuman and she's putting like, microchips in her and all of that other shit. And like, I'll be, do this, that, and the other. And you have all of those other, I forget their names, but the guys who are, I don't even know what it's called, but the ones who are trying to posit ways to live forever by basically or not body replacement, but you know what I mean, like using technology and whatnot to prolong the body. You're disassociating yourself from the physical reality you have behind you, and it's like, remember the philosophical conundrum of like the mind-body distinction, whether it was real or not. Was Descartes full of shit for saying I think therefore I am? You just it's, in some sense, it disassociates you from everything. In reality, if you really think about what they're trying to do, they're trying to make Descartes real in a objective as much as possible. Like I said, transgenderism seems to me
so their ultimate goal, their ultimate goal is to put the brain in the vat. That's their ultimate goal, so that they can control and control the knobs so that the brain is stimulated, in perpetuity. Right.
And they'll probably use different language or think of it a different way. But at the end of the day, you are in some sense recreating that Descartes mind-body distinction. There is this entity that is you, that is your desires.
Yeah.
And anything beyond it is not necessarily inconsequential, but should be within your right and freedom to control and change.
Yeah.
And adjust as you see fit. That's pure solipsism.
Yeah. 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 Because it's ultimately saying it's divorcing you from the boundaries of reality that we all have to deal with. It's denying that those should even exist, which on the one hand is charmingly naive, but on the other hand, it's deeply disturbing if you actually have the ability to negate the natural bounds of human beings, which is the ultimate goal, because the ultimate goal of liberalism, of liberal democracy, to control nature, including human nature, including biological reality, and push it so far beyond that it's whatever you want. Everything becomes a choice. It's like every aspect of life becomes an Amazon catalog where all you have to do is choose. You just have to pick what you want, and you can be that. It's fucking creepy, if you ask me.
But it was birthed from the liberal notion of, hey, we have the intelligence and fortitude to dominate, right?
Yeah.
We can shape the world.
Yeah, we can shape the natural world. Yeah.
And when you say it that way, kind of abstracted, you'd say, oh, that sounds reasonable. Yeah, who wouldn't want to do that? That shows our human ingenuity and success. We're proud of ourselves. Well, take it to its logical conclusions, continue, through postmodernism, what have you, when you're rejecting a lot of axiomatic notions that even the fucking founders of liberalism would have not even questioned. Right?
Yeah.
And now, but you still have that kernel, and it becomes this weird, like I said, solipsistic and destructive act, which is why in our broader context, when I thought about this idea, I almost jokingly like, oh, what the hell would sex robots do? It's hard for me to conceive of our world and our political ideologies existing in such a way as to deny this becoming a big reality, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it fits so well into our worst aspects of ourselves.
Well, no, it's not that it fits so well into the worst aspects of ourselves. It fits so well into the aspects that we are relentlessly being encouraged to pursue under the liberal democratic paradigm. Of like basically hedonism, and quote unquote self-fulfillment, which is just fancy word for hedonism, and this is creepy as fuck if you think about it.
It is. And here's another interesting thought, and this is where, remember when we had the ethics of can a robot feel? Does it dream of electric sheep and all of that things? I'd hate to say this is the feminist argument, even though the feminists would probably use this argument. I think it's bigger than them. What about those situations where, I'll just give a use case, not saying like this represents everything. Imagine a guy who, maybe this guy has bloody murder on his mind. This is the guy who, if push came to shove and all other circumstances, will go around hunting women at night and killing them.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when he gets to the sex robots, and do we allow, and he just says, oh, I'm going to knock one off at the end of each fucking orgasm night because that's how I get my cookies off.
Yeah, I'm gonna strangle them to death, quote unquote. Yeah.
What do you do in that situation? How do you even mentally process it to a certain extent?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting question, because so it turns out that like the hypothetical, you have a sociopath who buys a sex doll and he quote unquote rapes and murders the sex doll. Let's just posit for the sake of argument that every day he literally destroys a $10,000 sex robot or whatever, right? He actually, quote unquote, murders it. Has he committed a crime? No, because it's his own property. You are allowed to destroy your own property. Nobody's ever denied that. You can do with your property as you see fit. And nobody's arguing at this point so far that the sex doll has autonomy, although some feminists are starting to argue that in order to stop the advent of the sex robot, which, by the way, I want to get to that. I want to understand why the feminists are doing that. But going back to this hypothetical, this thought experiment. So the guy is killing, he's a homicidal maniac against sex robots. Is he somebody who is potentially dangerous to the wider society? I mean, like, how do you judge the morality of it? He's just destroying property. If I take a pack of cigarettes, an empty pack of cigarettes, and crush the box and throw it away, nobody in their right mind would claim that I'm committing any kind of crime or of any sort. It's just, it's just an empty cigarette box that I am discarding. So if a man goes ahead and rapes, quote unquote, and murders, quote unquote, a sex robot, should we be disturbed? Why should we be disturbed? Because, on a philosophical level, the sex robot and the empty pack of cigarettes are exactly the same thing. So what's the problem? But we all feel that there's a problem.
Yeah. What's interesting about this, part of the reason there's two reasons I gave this use case. One, it's an old one. In fact, Ray Bradbury did a short story, pretty much exactly this, in the 50s, where in his future world, he posits like a man, his wife cucked him. He wants to create a replica of her, which he can kill and feel better. And he does eventually. And because there's an argument in society about this, he is put to death for murdering a product that was designed to be killed. You know what I mean? So it's, that's the conundrum you've had. And the other reason I brought it up is because it actually does overlap with the feminist argument. Not all of what they're trying to do. I think they're a little bit more opportunistic in doing other things. But what their case would be, and it's what the case we're probably considering of, what is the societal negative externalities, which your point is like, part of the challenge is if you say, it's just product, it's okay, do whatever you will, you're not really harming anything, but you're fulfilling a desire that, under ordinary circumstances, he would go out killing real women. Are you in some sense enabling him to say, what, this is your prep work before you go and do the real one? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because it reminds me of the issue of ethical child porn. Okay. Because look, today there exists the technology, Photoshop and what have you, to easily create images of children in grossly suggestive sexual situations without ever harming an actual child. Okay, it's simplicity itself. It's no trick at all. Okay, I mean, come on. How many times have you seen those mistakes of Photoshop where you have somebody like who had 3 hands by accident, right? And it looks real, right? It looks very real, and of course, it's impossible. And so, child pornography has always been something that we've despised because we inherently think that a child is actually being harmed. But what happens with child pornography where no child is being harmed? It's just manipulation of imagery, potentially to create images that some pedophile can get off on, and therefore, we are hoping, would reduce his impulses to actually perform harm in an actual child, right? So it becomes like this weird situation because there are arguments on both sides. The argument being we should produce quote unquote ethical child porn so that these pedophiles can get their rocks off and therefore it's a release mechanism. And the other side of the argument is we should not do this because it only encourages these pedophiles, and eventually they'll get to a point that they're not satisfied with jerking off to images and they're going to decide to do it to an actual child. So, and there are compelling arguments for both sides of this debate. Ditto with the issue of the homicidal maniac and the sex robot that gets murdered, quote unquote. I don't know. I find it's a weird situation.
It is, isn't it? And I think part of the reason I bring it up because it hinges on the other thing that is so weird about this. Remember, we joked about, does the robot have rights? But it does hinge on that, right? It hinges on the idea of when you
No,
have
no, no,
something.
no,
No,
no.
no, it does. It does. Let me tell you why. Yeah, let me finish.
Uh-huh.
It hinges on it because if you predicate the idea that this, because it's so much like the real thing, we have to treat it as, in some sense, creating externalities in the society like the real thing. You then have to posit, well, then whether you think it on the core level or not, effectively you're operating as if the robot does have rights, as if the robot is a proxy for how you interact with other humans. You are that is the incubus of the whole notion of robot rights. The robot is a thing. It's an entity. It may even have something like agency. Whether or not it really does or not, we operate and have to as if it does.
Well, no, I don't see that the argument would go in that direction. I think it would be more of an issue of the welfare of society. And I know that the welfare of society is something that nobody argues in favor about practically. But like, for instance, in the issue of ethical child porn, that is essentially the argument that's being made at this point. And that's why I brought up the issue, because it's an easy proxy for this problem that divorces the issue of the robot rights, because nobody in their right mind would say that child porn has rights. Ethical child porn has rights. We can destroy it or have it or not, as the case may be. So we're limiting ethical child porn because we are afraid for the society. That's the rationale at this time.
Well, the thing is, even if you had fake child porn, we would treat it as if you actually abused a child. In our mental model, we do.
You think so?
So I think in the mental model, people operate as if you are a child abuser at that point. So even though there isn't a physical child that was abused, the act manifested itself. And I think in the case of a sex doll, because there's a thing, right, that looks, feels, and acts and talks like a human,
right,
you're gonna project on it. Think about how people respond to their fucking pets, their dogs, their cats.
Yeah.
They anthropomorphize them.
Well, not only that. I mean, if you sexually harm an animal, for instance, you're socially ostracized, and legally you can get into a lot of trouble. Okay. Yeah.
And think, if you can anthropomorphize a dog, a cat, something that doesn't even look like a human, imagine what you're going to do when something looks exactly like you.
Why is it that feminists are against the sex dolls? What's their argumentation?
Well, I think there's a number of things, and it's to compact it all down is maybe unfair to certain feminists, but whatever. So I think there's they have that. They're not real people. So I think, yes, there's partly it's that, what does this mean for society? But I also think, rather than society, I think they're thinking of themselves as a class. Right, much like identity politics. Like, what does this mean for the black people? What does it mean for the brown people? What does it mean for the feminists? What does it mean for the women? And for the women, it's like, well, this means competition for us. It means that men may not need us. It means we have potentially less access to financial resources. I think it's almost like an advocate, just pure self-interested advocacy at a certain point. It's like, this is competition.
But what argument are they floating out as a justification to prohibit sex dolls? Or are you not familiar with those arguments?
They have a few arguments, but the biggest one is when you have a man in a relationship with an artificial female, one that he can purchase, one that doesn't talk back and fight to him. He is creating what he really wants all women to be, which is quiet, complacent, and be it disposable or purchasable. And their attitude there is to say, if that's what he responds to the dolls, that's what he really wants with women, and it reinforces that we will always be tied down as a slave class.
That's a pretty thin fucking argument, if you ask me.
I'm not here to defend it. I'm just just here to articulate it.
No, because like the formerly, I mean, previously you were talking about the underlying and actual motivation, and here you are giving what you understand to be the formal motivation that basically, they treat sex dolls badly, and therefore they're going to treat women badly, and therefore no sex dolls to disincentivize them from hurting real women, right? That I find is sketchy as hell. It's basically saying, if you play violent video games, you're going to wind up being violent. And we all know that that's not true. That the underlying concept would be the liberation of male desire. Yeah, I think that ultimately is the issue. That feminists, that's the thing. Feminist is ultimately Victorian. That's always been my thinking.
But also dictatorial, right? I
Yeah,
mean, they've operated very successfully on the notion that, look, we are, because, like, that's why I say it's an advocacy group, that we are advocating that our class, namely women, will have control over important matters, be it financial, but most importantly, like sexual
yeah.
control. We get to dictate when it happens, with whom it
Pro-choice. Yeah,
happens, what you do. You gotta basically sign a fucking contract as when you
and
progress
make
from heavy
us
petting to
happy.
sex.
Make us happy.
Yeah, and make us happy, all of that thing. What it really saying is, look, we've been in control of this engagement. I'm going to
Yeah,
use as cold clinical language as I can. We are in charge of this merger, if you will, and it's our terms. And when you introduce something like competition, when you introduce something that can, fulfill your desires without our terms and conditions and, signing our T's and C's, we don't like that.
yeah,
Just like mainstream media doesn't like little fucking podcast channels, just like,
yeah,
but nobody likes disruption. I mean, to put it in those harsh terms, and I'd hate to do that because part of our argument has always been that there's a shift in humanity, but it is a disruption in the
yeah.
market. We're going to disrupt what the human could do for you and create something that's kind of more to your needs. That's
Yeah.
the argument, right?
Yeah. Well, my thinking is that feminism, like I said, I think it's Victorian, and it tries to control male sexuality, sort of like to look throughout history. Men have worked and struggled so as to win a woman, right? That's the basic motivation to get together a farm or a business or a shop or whatever or a career and get the money so that he can convince a woman to have a kid with him because he can provide the necessary sustenance, financial, whatever, social, so that the woman can have a child, his child, and they'll form a family. That's always been the nature of the situation, right? And women, feminism, it seems to me, has tried to co-opt the control of the whole shebang. And yeah, they see sex dolls as a way that would erode their control because they've been very successful at controlling men by way of sexuality and sexuality and sexual privilege. Oh, she's a woman and therefore she has certain rights. I mean, look at the Kavanaugh Blasey Ford situation, right, where a woman with nothing, I mean, just a random allegation, was treated as if she were saying gospel. If it had been reversed, if it had been a man making some accusation, such unfounded accusation as that, he would have been laughed out of court, laughed out of any hearing room. Nobody would have paid attention because it would have been absurd. And yeah, feminism has created this, special snowflake situation with women. And yeah, they'd be afraid. I think that, how could I put this? This is going to sound weird, okay? But I think that in a weird way, feminists, women who are feminists, get their rocks off on knowing that there are incels, and they want that to continue. And the notion of realistic AI-driven sex dolls is an affront to their ego.
No, I don't think that's weird at all. I think that's much like how, for certain products, the exclusivity
Yeah,
adds to the value.
yeah.
Maybe that could certainly very well be the case here. At the very least, it's a manifestation of, look, you're the way you are because I made you. Isn't that make me feel powerful?
Yeah.
It's like, that,
Yeah.
no, that I think
you have no sexual availability. You have no sexual opportunities because I am
I did
denying
that
you.
to you.
I
Yeah,
am
I
denying
denied
you that.
exactly.
Oh, and now you have a sexual opportunity where you just go to a store and buy some machine and you're not going to orbit me anymore? Because that's the other thing. So many feminists I've noticed have, and I've only recently noticed this. I mean, it's so obvious, but I'm kind of surprised that I didn't notice it before. So many feminists have beta orbiters constantly circling them. And the idea of them losing that ego boost, yeah, must be catastrophic. And the fear of that, the fear that these beta orbiters would just abandon them and not give them that attention. Yeah.
Well, think about it. Like it's almost like this may not be the perfect example, but I get the vibe a little bit. Remember, imagine if you're in. I keep using business analogies, but whatever, it works. Imagine like you're in a very really regulated business, but regulated in such a way as to mean that everybody only has to buy your products, and you're resting on your laurels.
Yeah,
And
monopoly.
all of a sudden, essentially monopoly. And all of a sudden, some competition comes in, and you worry. And the reason you worry, it isn't even so much that it just has to take market share from it. You're worried that is this going to reveal that at the end of the day, I didn't have any substance to make people want to buy my shit. It was only because they had to, and then you have to realize what was your real value here. Because that could very well be what the feminist situation could be. It's like, I have to earn my bones here. And I don't know that I can do that without just, nannying, forcing people.
You have so many middling men winding up with these fucking land whales, right? And the memes are hilarious. You have that like skinny little blonde army guy marrying this enormous land whale. There are famous pictures of memes of their wedding. It was fucking horrifying, right? And not to mention they all looked severely inbred. It was just bizarre, laughable, and just depressing. But anyway, all in equal turns. But the point is, see, if those middling men don't have to settle for a land whale, instead they could get a sex doll who looks like Emma Watson with tits, then they're fucked. Then those women are going to have to work out. They're going to have to lose the weight. They're not going to be able to be land whales anymore. They're going to have to be better. Look, I'm living in Ukraine. Ukraine is a poor country. All of the women look attractive. They have to. Because if they don't look attractive, the guys are not going to pay attention to them. And they want a guy to pay attention to them because since it is a poor country, most of these women want to land a quote-unquote good man who will take care of them. And they are, it's really funny because I've noticed that women in Ukraine are on the prowl, but not like in a sexual, slatternly way or meretricious way, but rather they are looking for a man who can support them. Okay.
Yeah, they want a good husband.
They want a good husband.
And it's not even in a gold brick digger kind of way, because I don't even think they. It's not that they want to divorce you. No, they want someone who has the family, someone who has the money, can support the family.
Exactly.
I don't consider that even,
That's why I'm going to make an emphasis, because a lot of women in the West say, "Oh, all Ukrainian women are gold digging whores or whatever." They're not. They want a family. They want to have kids. They want to have a traditional family, and they live in a poor country, and they recognize it. They don't pretend, because they can't afford to pretend, that they live in a well-off society and that they could do whatever they want. They know that they cannot. They know that they're limited. And here's the weird thing. They are more fulfilled. You have no idea how many women I see every day walking around with a stroller, with kids, and they're happy. They're clearly happy. You can tell. Even when the kid is being a little irritating and a little bit annoying, like children always are, they are fundamentally happier than these career women, these solipsistic women in the West. And so, they have to compete. They have to compete for a man. And so they dress up, they look good, they have makeup, they take care of their figure. Yeah, they take care of their morals too, because that matters to guys. And any woman who says otherwise is an idiot. Because nobody wants to, wife up a slut. It's as simple as that. And so, they'd have to. Western women would have to compete. Okay, I'm going to tell you a very vulgar joke I heard recently that I thought was very funny. That a guy said that. He has a scale for women, 1 to 10, right? But his hand is a 5. So if a woman is 5 or less, he's just not going to date her, which I thought was funny. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny and vulgar and all the rest of it, sure. But it's an indicative point. Sex dolls will force women to compete for men, and they don't want to. They just don't. Because, exactly like you said, if they have a monopoly position, why would they want to give up that monopoly position and have to compete and have to provide a better quote unquote service, a better quote unquote product for the men that they want? They don't want that. So yeah, especially this whole notion of fat acceptance, this notion, the feminist pushed notion that, healthy at any weight and that encourages women to look like not only land whales, but, no makeup, they don't fix their hair, they don't wear nice clothes, no heels. I mean, shit, they don't even know how to walk in heels nowadays, right? They don't look attractive. And feminism is the reason for this. It's a monopoly thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because to me, because at the end of the day, in a really big way, I think the competition here is going to be between the sex dolls and the Ukrainian girls. I don't mean exclusively Ukrainian, but you get my point. If and I mean that in a few ways. Like if we're really talking about just pure, we accept that the world will always be now hedonistic, that liberalism is going to just make sure that maintains, and you have the possibility of robots, feminists aren't going to win, right? They just can't stack up. You're only going to deal with, like I said, the you will always get a 10 machine kind of thing versus, the Ukrainian girls or whatnot who you go out of their way to try to compete at that level. The feminists aren't going to stand up. And it's still going to be the sex dolls versus the Ukrainian women, even if you think that the debate going forward is going to be whether we build families or whether we just be hedonistic, because that is the difference, right? Because the sex doll is it's the perfect mate that does not ask anything of you versus a woman who could potentially be the perfect mate, but she needs that family. It's the ongoing perpetuation of the species. And that, that's why I said this is where the rubber is going to hit the road going forward as to which way Western men, as they say. I don't think feminists are gonna win in either situation, right? I mean, they're not suited for either.
I think that the way things are today, the Ukrainian girls are going to lose. It'll be the dolls that win, because we do not encourage people to have families. I think that's the number one thing that is the disaster of liberal democracies, that it is not encouraging families. It encourages individuals, but not families. It has even no conception of the family, and it looks down on families, and it has created all these mechanisms to ensure that you do not have a family. I'm talking contraceptives and abortion. And abortion, which is murder, and don't ever let anybody say otherwise. Well, abortion is encouraged, it's encouraged as if it's a perfectly normal thing. It's gotten to that point of being so against the family that they are willing to encourage murder, and nobody says anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that robots would win in the Western democracies. The robots would win, and it would just be so much easier. And of course, technological development and market forces being what they are, these robots, once they become really popular, once they hit some tipping point, they would advance exponentially insofar as verisimilitude. I think that would be the horrifying part, that these sex dolls, because right now they're made of, I don't know, silicone or something like that. I mean, I look at
it varies depending on what country you get it from, but essentially yes.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of them, and they all look sort of like slightly out of focus bodies, right? Yeah, because they're matte and they're probably buffed up, silicone kind of thing. But I'm sure that over time they could get to a point where those dolls would feel and look and react like actual people. Oh man, I mean, how are you gonna, once the boy's seen the city, it's gonna be tough to get him to stay on the farm. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I mean, well, that to me, this is really part of the reason why I wanted to bring this up, because I think it emphasizes that, when you say like, oh, it's so weird that we could have such strong relationships with things that aren't even human, and it just says, it underlines to me how little we're human right now.
Yeah.
And we don't even need sex robots to kind of tell you. I mean, it helps to articulate that, but the reality of the situation is we've already kind of cut
also
away.
I think there's something else too to that, to that very notion of affection for a robot. You see, it struck me now, I'm 50, right, as I perennially tell you guys, and as a 50-year-old man, I'm not particularly attached to any physical object, okay? Like, I have my studio and my gear and shit, sure, and because I actually use this stuff. But if the studio was set on fire and I lost all the gear, I'd be like, oh shit, I got to go to the store and buy all this crap again, because I use it. It's not, I don't have any effective thing for it, right? I have like a collection of mugs, for instance, that whenever I go to any place, travel anywhere at all, even for business, I'll buy a mug as like a memento of wherever I was. Of course, a mug that is, has the logo of the town or city or wherever the hell, right? Because it's just the stupid thing I have. If I were to lose those mugs, that the thing that I have the most affection for, I'd be like, oh shit, I lost the mugs, big deal, and that's that. But I recall when I was younger, when I was an adolescent, objects had much more importance to me. I was a pack rat. I would hold on to everything because there was an emotional attachment to things that now, as a 50-year-old man, I recognize as an adolescent worldview, an adolescent emotion. Because once I have had children of my own, the notion of being attached to objects is ridiculous. I'm much more attached to actual people, my descendants, my two children who will grow up and have children of their own. And so those objects, quote unquote, are far more important to me than any kind of unconscious object, whatever gear I have or whatever furniture or what have you. But for adolescents who do not have that human connection, their collection of baseball cards or their PlayStation or whatever the fuck, it fulfills that need. Okay, and just as like the little dog, the little purse puppy, right, the little Chihuahua or whatever the fuck, fulfills women's maternal instinct and is an ersatz child until the woman actually has a child. And once she has an actual child, she doesn't want to see the little dog anymore because she's got the baby and fuck the little dog or the cat or whatever the hell, right? But I think that since our society discourages having children of your own, it'll be very easy for people to focus on these sex dolls. I mean, men in particular, to focus on these sex dolls and start assigning them, granting them affect, granting these toys, these appliances, emotional value.
But it's funny, they will have emotional value and they'll have connections, but it'll simultaneously, they'll act like a collector too. I can easily see a situation where they have a little haram. They'll live a little haram and say, like, I like the tits on this manufacturer, and I go to this one because of the ass is very nice, and I like the hair on this one. You know what I mean? And that's how it will work.
It will be fucking horrifying. That's creepy as fuck. God damn. I mean, imagine, a little harem, And you can just imagine, some guy somewhere in some basement, sets up the basement of his house, and it's like this weird sex dungeon where he's got all these cooing robots, just sexually compliant. Oh man, it's just deeply disturbing. I weep for Western civilization.
But yeah, the thing is, like, it could be disturbing, but it's not out of the realm of the real.
Oh no.
It is completely believable because I'm willing to bet. Well, one, I'm willing to bet people have collections already. I mean, that's just besides the point. But two, it goes to the nature of the type of person that's being created under these conditions, right? Because we've already have undermined the desire to reproduce yourself or your society. So therefore, you've already have the conditions of like, oh, these things that I own mean something to me. Because, like I said, it's a when I say it's a perversion, I may be being too kind to the idea. The idea necessitates this perversion. The idea that, like, you are who you are, or you are what you do, or it turns into you are what you buy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this collection of shit that you've had, be it books, be it baseball cards, your wardrobe, your women, your artificial women. Who are you? I'm the guy who has, the triple D green skin robot woman, and I feel like Kirk from Star Trek when he fucked the Orion woman.
Actually, you're right, because like all kinds of like the sex dolls will, because you can make their skin or their physical characteristics anything you want. I'm guessing that at some point there'd be like bespoke manufacturers of these robots.
Oh, there already are. I mean, leave aside the AI, which they are building. In America, the first, I think, super high-end sex doll manufacturer has already built a prototype AI. I think her name is Harmony.
Yeah.
It's very rudimentary. It's not believable, but they're already doing it.
It's the first step. Yeah, it's not believable now. Just as, the first CGI was not believable. You look at the Matrix 2, for instance, is crappy CGI. You look at Polar Express, the Uncanny Valley. Look at the shit now. Just a decade or so later, decade and a half, and the shit looks real. It looks real as all get out. Oh man, now this is it's a disaster for our society, because we're just going to be it's just going to be the individual and the state and nobody else. It'll be like this weird empty room, and no other human relationship except with things, appliances that affect you, and of course the state. Fucking creepy.
Yeah, and your casual interactions with coworkers is probably where your limits to human interactions are. Which is what
more not only casual but also highly structured and regimented, because you're going to be afraid the liability that you could get into trouble for having the wrong expression. It's going to be a fucking nightmare,
I know I'm blackpilling you, but you have to accept the white pill that will come with this.
Which is?
There's no way feminism survives this. There's no way feminism maintains going forward in this. Like we said, they can't compete with the robot. And in a society where we're all regimented anyway, it's not like you have to encounter a woman you don't like. Or you'll just deal with her as a functionary. Yes, I understand this is depressing, but you have to accept the minor little things that Anita Sarkeesians don't have a little role anymore.
I don't know if that's going to be true. I wonder what they're going to do with the male sex robots, right?
Same thing. Same thing, I'd say.
Yeah, but then what? Can the male sex robot rape a woman?
If she wants it to. That's gonna. Now that you said interesting, because here's the thing, and here's how sad I am as a person. I suspect a lot of women will program, if they have a male robot, they will program to have those fantasies.
Oh sure,
no doubt in my mind. That's going to be very common.
Yeah. I think that's going to happen. I think that all kinds of trouble is going to ensue because of that. Okay. For the robot manufacturers, law enforcement. Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? Arrest the sex robot for raping you?
RoboCop comes in.
Yeah, no, that's going to be fucking weird, right? Yeah, I mean, think about it. You program, you're a woman. You decide that this Chad-looking robot is going to rape you because that's your fantasy. And imagine that the rape, quote unquote, scenario proceeds, but then it gets a little too violent or a little too this or that. Who's going to be responsible for it? The manufacturer? That's going to be weird. It's going to be fucking bizarre.
And it's going to be funny to read the contracts when you purchase a sex doll, and it's like, we are not liable for any acts of sexual violence, mutilation, or all these things that they're going to try to clear themselves. It's going to happen. Well, because I know how the legal department works.
Well, no, it's going to be a lot like the car manufacturers and car ownership. That they're not. They're going to.
You think there's going to be like a? You think there's going to be like a? Like a Fight Club recall calculation. Like if there's been, we calculate the cost of payoff for the rapes against the recall of the sex doll, and if it's less than if it's more, or if the recall is less expensive than the lawsuits, we don't replace.
Yeah. I think that it's going to be along the lines of car manufacturers are not liable for faulty operations of a vehicle, right? If you do something stupid with a car and wind up crashing and killing yourself or somebody else, the Ford or Chevrolet or whomever is not responsible, right? And that's very ingrained in the law. I think it's going to have to be something like that. But I can see it very easily. Some woman getting roughed up by her own sex doll, and oh man, and I can just imagine the articles in Slate and Salon, about some I had a sex robot, it was so great, it's such a great relationship, but then he turned on me.
Yeah, he these awful robots that we've created. Here's an odd question. It's a little tangential, but when you brought up the car manufacturers, it immediately came to mind. The sex doll manufacturers right now are just like small companies. All they do is this. They're like, because it's an oddity to have.
Yeah. Well, wait until there's money to be made.
Who do you? But that's the thing. Who do you think would be the first company to want to push
Google.
it? You think? I thought so too.
Google.
But I'm kind of curious as to why you thought so.
Because they're into that whole thing. Sergey Brin and Larry Page, they're into that kind of shit. You know?
I think what they'll do is they'll take the Alexa module. Well, Alexa's, Amazon, but you get the idea. They'll take whatever AI module they have, plant it in the doll, and then every intimate thing you're saying to the goddamn doll, they're like, oh, all of it. And that, could you just imagine that you're let's say you're in your intimate moment with the doll, and all of a sudden she breaks to tell you some car insurance ad.
Yeah.
You're gonna be hard for that one.
Yeah. I want to see you there. Yeah, actually, it's going to be really interesting because, if the AI, we have the Internet of Things, right? So the sex doll AI, is it going to be connected to your Alexa or your Siri or whatever the hell, right?
That is the plan, because the current AI they do have is internet based. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be really fucking creepy because it would be no trick at all to record somebody having sex with a robot, right? I mean, and in point of fact, it would probably be necessary because the robot's, feedback or whatever, it would be sent back to the servers in the corporation that manufactured. No, they talk about privacy rights and all kinds of problems. I mean, this is actually all kinds of nastiness would rise up. And what happens if you have like sexual kinks, right? And the Amazon or Google or Apple or whoever owns the technology that you're fucking, right, records you and uses it to blackmail you.
Blackmail. And even if it's something as banal, it's like, this whipping is brought to you by Planner's Nuts. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
oh, God, yeah.
No, it's going to be like a fucking nightmare. Because I am completely creeped out by having my address book up in the cloud. I have all my info on my own computer. Okay. I have several computers, and I have one dedicated computer that is completely cut off from everything. And it has a VPN that's very, very sturdy, that a guy who's actually a specialist installed it for me and said, this is the one. This will, protect you against, fucking silver bullets. You know what I mean? And so that's the one I have with my sensitive information, right? And so, but even like my address book, the basic stuff that I use, it's on these computers. I do not put them up in the cloud, and I'm creeped out by it. But the idea that you'd be fucking some doll and the images of you having sex would be uploaded to some company and they would store that information.
And here's the thing. I think they'd want to push it even further, because think about it. Alexa's always there to hear you and everything, but it's not like Alexa's doing a hell of a lot to encourage you to give you all of your intimate desires to her. Yes, you're going to ask for shit and she'll be around the kitchen and whatnot. But imagine when you have a doll who you're in love with and you want to say everything to her. How could they not want it?
Oh, God. Yeah. Yeah, because it would be so easy to view the doll as a real person, because it'll be passing the Turing test, I would guess, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so, I mean, effectively, you'd feel it's a consciousness, and so you'd open up to that consciousness and wind up telling all kinds of details that, and happily telling those details because you think that this person, quote unquote, understands me. Oh man, it would be a fucking nightmare. It would be just, I don't even want to think about it. I don't want to go there because I just find the whole thing fucking creepy as fuck. But
it is creepy. But the thing is, and this is like, again, I said at the beginning of the podcast, why I love this concept so much is because it underlines all the things you should be worried about now, regardless of whether or not the doll is there. Yeah. I think it just accelerates it.
Yeah. Everybody keeps saying that, what happens when we get to the, what do they call the point where the AI becomes self-aware? The singularity. The singularity,
yeah.
Fuck that. It's when the sex dolls become popular. Then we've got real problems on our hands. When the sex dolls reach a tipping point. Because it's sort of like cell phones. Cell phones were around from the fucking 70s, for crying out loud. In the 1970s, there was cellular phones. I remember watching Lethal Weapon. There was the brick that was a cellular phone, right? and the 90s. And I remember in the like 98, 99, there was the flip top phone. No, wait, 97. There was a Motorola flip top, the clamshell. That was a pretty popular one. Like the rich people had it. It was like, it was actually, I remember like $200 a month to have it or something like that. It was not cheap. And then it just became more and more popular. And then we finally hit the iPhone in 2008 and it fucking exploded. And I mean, in 2008, the iPhone happened and it created the largest market cap company on the face of the planet, the first $1 trillion company. Yeah, I bet that, the sex dolls start to. Okay, so the sex dolls has been around now for a couple of decades, right?
Yeah, since the
I
90s,
think
or their current form in the 90s.
yeah, I think it's perfectly reasonable to think that it's going to gain in popularity during the 2020s, and then like around at the end of the 20s, like in 2027, 2029, there's a tipping point, and 2030, everybody just loads up on the things, and it becomes the thing. It becomes the big thing, the thing that everybody wants, and everyone wants their own doll, their own little, their personal sex slave, and
their companion.
Yeah, their companion, exactly. And yeah, I can also see that it would not just be sex dolls, right? But also, hey, by the way, have you seen Boston Dynamics videos?
Oh God, yes. I in terrifying manner, yes, I've seen
Yes,
them.
that's basically Cyberdyne Systems. That company. I think that they should just change their names and just get it over with. Because Boston Dynamics, fuck that. They are Cyberdyne Systems. They have these
And
robots.
Google owns them now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they look like they do things. It's not that they just like walk around and shit. There's one that looks like a man. It's anthropomorphized. It has 2 legs, 2 arms, and like what looks like a head. And the fucker can do backflips. And I've seen it do backflips, right? It just does all kinds of shit. How long do you think it'll take to take that robot and put some silicone sheath on it that makes it look like Emma Watson with tits, and we're on our way? You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, to me, like, and this is what's funny, it's like, of all of the things that you posit in the future, Blade Runner was always, to me, the idea of we're going to artificially create humans, the least controversial bit, right? It just makes the most sense that we would do that because we're a creator species. And the ultimate creation we're going to do is to create another species.
Yeah. The replicants, at least the replicants were organic. They were actually people. Okay?
Bioorganic. But you engineered them, and it was always like ambiguous as to whether there was.
Do you think that could look? Think of the leap. We had the dumb phones and then the smartphones, right? The dumb phone was just you can call and text. That's it, right? The smartphone it's a personal computer in your pocket, right? It was that leap, that quantum leap, and that quantum leap that made it so that you wanted it. Do you see a point where the robots? Yeah, there's sex robots with silicone and whatever. But just like Cyberdyne Systems Model 101 was that leap that that had living skin.
Yeah, no, I absolutely believe biomechanics will be the next shell of it. Yeah,
yeah, that some kind of. I actually think now that we're talking about it, and it seems absurd to be having this conversation on the one hand, but perfectly reasonable on another, that the big leap of the robots will be when they cease having silicone skin and they have like actual skin, like real skin, manufactured some way, somehow organic, but it's like a real person that on its surface it's indistinguishable from a person. You cut them open, and yeah, you see the metal, titanium, whatever it's made, the titanium bones, the circuitry and all the rest of it, but on the surface, it's like a real person. I think that would be the smartphone moment. That would be the iPhone's moment. That would be the moment when it just mass embraced and we get into serious trouble.
That's exactly how I think it's going to happen. I completely agree.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's going to be a fucking nightmare.
Buckle up, buckaroos.
Yeah,
it's going to happen. I mean, there's no way it can't happen. I'm thoroughly convinced.
Okay, so when are we projecting this?
I think your projection's pretty decent. I'd say by the 2020s we're gonna see
the
those,
clamshell phone.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna see some realistic, if not artificially reproduced skin.
Yeah, I think that we're going to have the equivalent of the clamshell phone, of the Motorola clamshell phone that was popular in the mid late 90s, in the mid to 2020s, and the iPhone moment early to sometime in the 2030s. Yeah, I bet that. And also, these robots, they're going to be, a lot of them are going to be pushed as assistants for older people.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is going to be pushed in that direction. Do you
Or
have any idea?
yeah, they'll cater, assistance for old people, or do you lost a mate? Here's someone who can kind of help be there, even though they're doing is just cooking for you or picking up your mail and all that thing. Of course, sex will be a big part of it because it's just an easy sell. But they will sell beyond that. Even I even see doll manufacturers today don't even call them sex dolls. They because they treat them as companionship. It's gonna be articulated that way. I think.
Yeah, a very articulate in a way that it's an easy sell. It just goes down smooth. Oh God, man. Okay, so by the year 2035, that's the bet that we'll have realistic robots that have some sort of exterior skin that is human, okay, that on a surface level it's indistinguishable from a person.
Yeah, I mean it's I could just imagine the ads. It's she's what you've been waiting for. It's like you can never you'll never tell who she is or that she's fake or God knows what.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing. The technology is just lying around. It's just a question of putting it together.
Oh, and it will be. I mean, there's too much money to be made. There's too many, cross-sell and upsell opportunities.
Yeah, because a doll like that, okay? I mean, if somebody were to sell them for $50,000, but it is a lifelike person, okay? And it has let's just say that it has lifespan of, say, I don't know, 3 years, 3 years, at $50,000, that's what, $16,000 a year, roughly, $1,200 a month? No, excuse me, $1,400 a month, something like that. Yeah. I think a lot of people would be like, "Fuck yeah, sign me up. Where do I sign?" Yeah.
And there's nothing about them that says they won't last longer than that, as far as I could tell.
Well, if they have real skin, real organic skin of some sort, okay, and
they'll sell Vita paste to feed the android so its skin can stay fresh.
Yeah, something.
I'm telling you, there's cross-sell and upsell opportunities galore.
Yeah, it could be that the skin, it deteriorates. I don't know. Every 6 months, you have to take it in.
Yeah, you got to take her in for a reskin job.
Yeah.
God.
Oh,
but it's true.
Man.
It's going to happen.
Yeah. Oh, well, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm just waiting for my companion to get reskinned.
Oh, little Georgiana, or little Tiffany. She's a little sagging these days. We had to kind of straighten her up. It'll be like remember the joke they made about face stretching in Brazil?
Yeah.
They'll just take it back to normal.
Yeah. Well, here's the creepy thing. What about child robots that are used for pedophiles?
Oh, I think they're gonna. I think that they, if they don't exist now, they will exist. I mean, that's the sad fact. I think it is going to happen.
Yeah, because I think that pedophilia is they're pushing the normalization of that hard. What the fuck, So yeah, if they can create a robot that looks like a child, everybody will be like, well, it's not hurting anybody. It's just an appliance. It's just going to be a weird situation where people are constantly hopscotching on the line. That it's a robot like a person, but it's also an appliance. And the moral argumentation is going to be flip-flopping over that line like crazy. Jesus. Okay, let's end the episode because, this is just creeping me out. What can I say? I'm an old boomer. God damn, yeah. I'm just this is beyond me. You?
Oh, I've gotten used to the Pinocchio story way too many times in my life to not.
Okay, so on that cheerful note, this has been the Coach and Benway podcast. Thank you very much for listening to us, and we will see you next time. Take it easy.
Later.